an all-female crew flying out of a London airport, and a passenger offloaded themselves.
I'm learning to fly, but I ain't got wings. Coming down.
Welcome everybody, this is Kasia Harukovic from Dbs Ca, and I would like to welcome you to our weekly podcast. Today we have Rachel. She's a Ryanair air pilot, and she's one of the 3% currently working as an air pilot, and hopefully you will be entertained and you will find out how to be a pilot and in the working environment with other captains, and maybe you will think that this job is for you as well. Rachel, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
So let me just ask you the first question. Can you tell me, why did you decide to become an air pilot?
My father was an airline pilot, so I always kind of grew up visiting him in the flight deck, going on trips with him, and from a very young age I had an interest in planes. We always used to go and watch the air shows near where I grew up in the south of England, and it always just seemed like a great job. I went in to visit him when I was about 12. He took me on a trip to New York, and I went into the flight deck while they were in flight, which you used to be able to do, and I literally looked at all the buttons and I wanted to know what all of them did, and I was like, right, okay, I'll give it a go, and it all sort of fell into place after that.
What kind of education is needed and how long does it take?
So before I started the training to become a pilot, I went to university and I studied English literature, which is totally irrelevant to what I do now, but it was a good kind of basis in sort of learning to live on my own. After I finished university, I applied to what's called an integrated flight school in Oxford in the UK, where they basically took us from having no hours to having a full commercial pilot's license. It took around about 18 months. We did 6 months of ground school where we did various subjects like meteorology, principles of flight, learning about the sort of systems on the planes, electrics, hydraulics, all the different things that you need to know to be a pilot. Did what's called ATPL exams after that. Once we passed them, we went out to the United States and flew for 6 months in Arizona, just flying the little piston engine planes around to get hours. And then we came back to Oxford and did about another 6 months learning to fly around the UK on just the instruments, and then came out, passed all the checks, came out with a license. And then after that, once I got the job with where I work now, I did about another 3 or 4 months training learning to fly the Boeing 737, which is what I fly, and a couple of months training on the line, which basically is flying passengers around, but I'm still learning, so I had training captain with me sort of to teach me all the ropes, and then that was it, checks, and on I go.
How did your family react to your decision to become a pilot?
They were pleased. My dad always encouraged it. He never forced us into it or anything, but he always encouraged an interest. And when I finally decided that I actually wanted to do it, he was really happy and very supportive. And it was really great for me having someone who knew it. You know, he flew for 40 odd years, so he was really great to have around. You know, he was really helpful, and he still is. You know, he still knows what I'm talking about when I talk to him.
And does any other family members use in aviation?
My brother has just started. He's literally just got the job and is in the training at the minute, so he's joining.
Do you know any pilots that work in the cabin crew because they couldn't secure the job?
I was really lucky in that when I came out, they were recruiting, and I only ever had one interview with this company. And fortunately, I managed to get the job. There are a lot of people that aren't so lucky. There are a number of people that I did my training with who never actually got a job flying. And one of my best friends, actually, who's also a girl, she was cabin crew for 7 years before she managed to get the job flying. Now she's flying, and she loves it. She's got a great perspective because she's been both in the cabin and in the flight deck. We have a lot of cabin crew who are actually training at the minute, doing kind of private pilot's licenses and stuff like that are really interested in doing it for a job as well. So yeah, there's quite a few.
How long are you a pilot and what is your rank?
I have been a pilot for 4.5 years and I'm a first officer at the moment. So there's just me, the captain, and first officer on any flight. But shortly I will be becoming a captain in the next few months.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Did you have to take a test? Or?
No, well, I'm currently in the stage. I did an assessment flight last week, flying as a first officer, and next is an interview, and then which should hopefully be in the next couple of weeks, and then after that I'll go into the training to be a captain. So all going well, I should be a captain by early next year.
Great. So is there like official graduation where you will get your stars?
We do actually, yeah. It's only new, so I didn't have it when I became a first officer, although they do now for new first officers. We have what's called a wing ceremony, which is kind of unofficial. Like it's nothing major, but you do go into the head office and they sort of hand you your 4 stripes and a certificate, I think. So it's not a big thing, but yeah, we do actually do a little ceremony thing when you pass your checks.
Is your license good for small private planes?
No, mine isn't. So you have the license, and then within the license you have different types of plane that you can fly. The only one that I have on my license is the 737. Plenty of people I know do also have small planes on their license, so they can go up on their days off and fly around. But I tend to keep my days off for non-flying related activities.
Would you consider them moving into a private air force? And say, like, if you have like a really rich guy and he says, "Okay, Rachel, I really like how you flew. Here's my jumbo jet. Be my pilot."
I think if someone gave me a jumbo jet to fly around, I probably would. A lot of people in my position do have an aspiration to fly business jets. For me, I don't think it would work. You have to be on call all the time. If you're flying with a really rich guy and he wakes up one morning and decides he wants to go to the Caribbean, he'll call you up and you just have to get up and go. Whereas what I do now, it's scheduled, so I know now what I'm going to be doing next week, what time I'm going to be home, and what my days off are going to be. So for me, commercial flying is what I want to do. But there's plenty of people that do want to do business flying as well.
Do you have any airlines that you would like to fly in the future and aspirations?
My dream job is to fly for Virgin Atlantic.
Why is that?
It just seems like a great company. Now, my dad did work for them, so I may be a little bit biased, but I grew up flying around with Dad on Virgin flights. I just love the atmosphere. I'd love to fly a bigger plane than I do now, like the jumbo jet. And it's a slightly different structure when you're flying in a long-haul airline, because you get to see the world, whereas with what I do now, we don't. We fly into a place and we turn around and fly back. So eventually I'd love to fly long-haul for Virgin Atlantic.
How does your day typically look like?
We have a fixed roster. So what generally happens is we work 5 days on and then 4 days off. You'll do 5 days on earlies, 4 days off, and then 5 days on lates, and then it'll start again. So what generally happens is we arrive at the crew room about an hour to an hour and a half before the flight, print off all the paperwork, the flight plans and the weather, check everything over, and then make a decision between myself and the captain on various things like the fuel that we're going to take for that day, and we discuss any issues that could be affecting us, like if there's bad weather or if there's something maybe a little bit wrong with the plane. Then we meet the cabin crew who come up to us in the crew room, so we'll have a chat with them as well, find out who's doing what, talk about how many passengers we have, and again tell them any issues, like if there's a problem with, say, the steps on the plane, we'll discuss that with them, discuss the weather and things like that. And then we tend to go to the aeroplane about 40 minutes before the departure. So we'll designate one of us to be flying the first flight and the other one will be monitoring. So what happens then is the pilot flying will go into the flight deck and set everything up, turn everything on, program the routes into the computer, and the other pilot will perform the walk around, check everything on the outside of the plane is good. And then we both meet in the flight deck. We brief together things to do with that specific flight, so the departure out of Dublin, the taxi route and how we're going to get to the runway, things like that. Meanwhile, the cabin crew sort of doing security checks on the plane, then they'll start the boarding. We'll make sure we've got the fuel on board. Once everything's on and everything's good, we do our final bits of paperwork, close up the plane, push back, and off we go. We generally do between 2 and 6 flights in a day. Normally it'll be 2 or 4, but very occasionally on a bad day it could be 6. So yeah, we take off, we do the one flight, then we swap roles. So if I flew the first sector, I will then be monitoring on the second sector. Do it all again, come back, turn around to go out and come back again. Generally about 4 flights.
So what should happen, or what would happen to have 6 flights?
Sometimes they're just scheduled. So from Dublin, we fly a lot of flights into the UK, which are obviously quite short flights. And sometimes they're just scheduled as a 6 sector day. They're not too bad. So we say you do something like you'd go from Dublin to Liverpool, back to Dublin, over to Bristol, back to Dublin, and then over to Edinburgh and then back. Something like that. So you just do the 6 flights. But because each flight is less than an hour, we can do it within a certain amount of time.
Last year, the Germanwings pilot Andreas Lubitz has crashed the plane in the French Alps. How does strategy change you and your colleagues, and what are the measures in place to ensure your well-being?
I think it affected everyone. Now, it didn't affect us from the point of view of our operation, but what did change was passengers and how they viewed us. I think people suddenly became very aware of the fact that when they get on a plane, their lives are literally in the hands of these two people up the front who they've never met and probably haven't even seen. There was, especially in the aftermath of that, people were kind of looking at us a little bit differently. Now, it didn't affect me from the point of view of being worried because I know that the people that I fly with are great. We've always had a system for if one of us has to leave the flight deck. So what will happen is, if, for example, if I need to use the toilet, we'll put the seatbelt signs on, we'll call a cabin crew. They come up to the flight deck and one of them comes in while the pilot leaves. So there's always two people in the flight deck at any one time. And that system for us has always been in place. Now, other airlines in the UK didn't have the same system. So in other airlines, the pilots were able to just sort of get up and go out and leave the other person on their own. Since that's now changed, and I think all airlines insist that when a pilot leaves the flight deck, a cabin crew member has to come in. So there's always two people in the flight deck.
How do you cope with stress? And it's not like, you can leave the plane.
If we have a stressful situation, generally we tend to just get on with it. Now, we have a lot of downtime while we're flying. So high stress situations would be the takeoff and the landing and the climb and the descent. During the cruise period, especially if we're doing a longer flight, the time in between, we don't have a huge amount to do. So you can kind of relax during those periods a little bit. We have a lot of paperwork and obviously we always have to monitor what's going on. But generally, because we've got the autopilot in at that stage, we can kind of relax. And what tends to happen is if I'm feeling a little bit tired or something, I'll just say to the captain, do you mind if I just take 5 minutes? And I'll just sort of, you can just take 5 minutes to kind of relax and chill out before you start up again. So we go from a period of very high stress to a period of very low stress and then back again. It just becomes normal and you don't find it so stressful.
And in private life, what do you do to keep your stress low levels?
Well, like I said, we're lucky in my company because we have a fixed roster. So every 5 days on, I get 4 days off, which I can just use to relax. I personally do a lot of running, so I just go for a run and that kind of releases any stress that I may have. I don't generally find my job too stressful because I'm used to it now. When I first started, it was really stressful because it was all kind of go, go, go the whole time, whereas now I'm used to it. So I don't tend to find it too stressful. And the good thing is as well is you can leave your work at work. There's never anything to take home. You land, do your final paperwork, and you go home, and you don't have to think about it until the next day when you start again. So it's quite easy to leave it aside most of the time.
And switch off.
Exactly.
So how do you manage your personal life with such a crazy schedule?
Sometimes with difficulty. It depends on... A lot of my friends are pilots, so we all kind of understand the lifestyle. It's difficult sometimes with people that aren't pilots because, my days off, for example, this week is Tuesday to Friday. And obviously everyone else is in work or in school or anything at that time. You just kind of get used to it. It's great because it means, if I need to get stuff done, go to the bank or anything, I can go when it's quiet and I don't have to go on the weekend. But yeah, you just kind of have to find time. And I have to make sure that anyone in my life who doesn't fly is understanding and aware of the fact that sometimes I fly on sociable hours.
I can imagine that you have traveled to many countries. Do you go on holidays abroad or do you rather spend them at home?
Well, you'd be surprised actually as to how little I've travelled since I've been working. Like I said, we don't tend to stay in any of the countries that we land in. We generally land, refuel, pick up the passengers and turn around and come back. So I've seen a lot of countries from the air, but I haven't actually visited that many places. So when I get time off, I like to go away and see places. But also I do like spending time at home because having moved away to do my job, it's nice sometimes to just go home and see my parents.
A few months ago, there was a tape leaked from the control tower. You could hear British Airways pilot arguing with traffic controller at Dublin Airport. It wasn't professional and it was just mean. Other pilots were not happy with this behavior and one of them even called him a tool. I understand the pilot could have been stressed or upset, but in my opinion, when you listen to the tape, it just sounds really disrespectful to the air tower employee. Does this happen a lot? Are there any measures to make, the relationship between you and the people in the tower or the cabin crew better?
It doesn't happen that often. Now, that particular incident was an anomaly. Normally, the interactions between the pilots and air traffic control is polite. It can be stressful. It can get very busy on the air traffic control frequencies, and there's quite a lot of time you'll be desperately trying to say something to you, but you just can't get a word in edgeways. The majority of us will just wait until there's a chance to say what we need to say. We do have some measures in place to improve the relationship between pilots and air traffic control. Recently, the company I work for set up visits to the air traffic control tower, so we could go up and see what they do and try and make sure that we can work with them and that we're all after the same, because we are all after the same thing. They want to get us in the air and we want to get in the air. So 9 times out of 10, it's very professional frequencies, and generally people aren't rude to each other.
Love is in the air, every sight and every sound.
Can you tell me about relations between the pilots and the cabin crew? I can imagine there might be few couples working together.
There are. It is a cliche to say, but there are plenty of pilots, cabin crew couples. My parents were one. My dad was a pilot and my mum was cabin crew. So I grew up being very aware of that relationship. It's normally fine. You'll get the odd time when you're flying with someone and their girlfriend is in the cabin. Generally, they just get a little bit of special treatment. But yeah, it's always very professional at work. So sometimes you wouldn't even know that 2 people were seeing each other.
Kind of romantic, like when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. Love in the air. Yeah, no, it happens. There are some serious romance stories, and there's a lot of happy marriages that have come out of people flying together.
So let's talk about the current political situation in Europe and the bomb attacks in the last 2-3 years. Are the new security measures affecting you a lot? Do you see the changes?
There's definitely a change in attitude. Now, I've only ever really flown from UK and Irish airports, meaning I've only ever really gone through security in the UK and Ireland. And security in both of these countries has always been strict. So from my point of view, not a lot has changed because it's always been very, very strict getting through security here. I can imagine in other countries it probably has got stricter, but we haven't really noticed. There have been a few memos to us, just to make sure that we're making sure that everything is above board. The only thing really that's probably changed the most is attitudes to suspicious passengers. Now, our company makes us very aware that if we do have someone who could be acting suspicious, we're to investigate. Now that people have become more sensitive towards that sort of thing. But in general, the security has always been very strict. So I haven't noticed a huge difference from that respect.
Are you afraid that something might happen while you're in the air?
There's so many things that can happen when you're in the air. You're always aware of it. It doesn't affect me. I don't sit there and sort of worry that something's going to happen. The thing is with flying, there's very, very strict rules on our training. Now we have to go back into the simulator every 6 months and practice all the things that could go wrong. So every 6 months, I'll spend 2 days in the UK sitting in a simulator practicing fires and engine failures and all the scary things that could happen, because they need to know and we need to know that if anything does happen, we know exactly what to do. There's very, very strict checklists and procedures that we have outlined for anything, like any tiny thing that goes wrong, we've got a checklist for it. So we're aware and the company's aware and the passengers can be aware that we know what to do when anything bad happens.
Well, they say, and it's actually, I think it's even proven that you're more likely to die in the car crash than
I
in the plane
think air
crash.
travel is one of the safest means of travel proportionally to how much that happens.
Do you hear people clapping after the plane has landed?
Sometimes, yes.
How does it make you feel?
It depends on my mood. Sometimes I like it, and I'm like, oh, thanks very much. I appreciate that. And sometimes I'm like, oh, shut up. It really depends on how I'm feeling on that particular day, and if I think it's been a good landing, because people think that a good landing is a soft landing, which isn't necessarily the case. People think that if you put it in really, hard into the ground, people think that's bad landing, whereas sometimes that's actually preferable. If, for example, if it's raining and the runway's wet, you're better off landing positively, as we say, because then the brakes can kick in. Whereas if you put a real soft landing in, it may feel nice, but it's not necessarily always the safest way. So sometimes, I could have done, a hardish landing onto a short, rainy runway. That's the best way to do it. And then passengers will get off and make a comment about the landing being bumpy. And I'm like, okay, do you want to come and have a go?
Yeah, I never thought about this because it's actually like with driving a car. If you do it soft brake,
yeah,
then you can slide.
Exactly. And for example, an airport like Leeds is a very short runway. It's normally very, very windy going in there, and quite often it's raining. Now, if you try and we call it a greaser when it's a nice soft landing. If you try and grease it onto the runway, it can feel lovely for all the passengers. But if you get it wrong, and it's much easier to get a greaser wrong than a tough landing, there's all kinds of issues that you can get, and your braking won't be as efficient. So sometimes it is best to positively plant the plane on the tarmac rather than greasing it on.
Yeah, I learned a lot today. Did you ever had a passenger visiting the cockpit?
Not in the air, because that's not allowed anymore. We do get passengers coming in before takeoff and after landing, relatively often. Mostly children will come in. Quite a lot of the time, it's not the child that wants to see the flight deck, it's the mum or dad that wants to see the flight deck. So I had one kid come in once, and I think it was when I was working in Stansted. We did a flight to Knock in Ireland, and it's a really, really tiny airport. Like, there's literally space for maybe 2 planes to be parked there, and surrounded by fields and everything. And this little kid came in, maybe 5 or 6, and the dad was behind pushing him in, like, go and have a look at the plane, talk to the pilots. And this little kid came in, and his eyes lit up, and he was like, oh my god, dad, look. And I was like, yeah, this is great, isn't it? Yeah, come on, have a look at my plane. And he just pointed outside and went, there's a tractor! And I was just like, I was devastated. I was like, yeah, okay, the tractor's more interesting than the plane. I'm there turning all the lights on and making all the noises, and the kid was much more excited by the tractor outside. But yeah, normally they're interested, you switch all the lights on, let them sit in the seat, and they kind of play with the controls and have a little bit of fun.
So now you know what job next is for you.
Apparently tractor driving is more glamorous than flying. So I've learned.
Did you ever have a baby born on board?
No, thank God. I don't know I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. No, I haven't. And I've never actually heard of anyone, no one I know has ever had it happen. I don't think it's a very common occurrence. We've had passengers get sick. I've never had anyone get really sick. I've had the odd person, we've had to hurry up in the landing, but I've never had anything major like that happen, fortunately.
Yeah, there was one lady, she had a baby, I believe, a few months ago, flying to Malaysia.
Oh, yeah.
She was like 6 months pregnant or something.
Yeah. I think they ended up saying the kid could fly for free or something when it told her.
They got like 1 million air miles
for being born on the flight. That's great.
If you could tell your passenger one thing, what would it be?
I think I'd just tell passengers to trust us. You get a lot of people that are nervous and sort of a bit afraid of flying, and I think it's good for them to know that we know what we're doing, and safety is our number one priority. People say sometimes like we're rushing to get there on time, or we're trying to save fuel and all this stuff, but realistically we're not. We just want to make sure the plane gets from A to B and everyone gets there with us. And flying, unlike maybe being a doctor, which has some parallels, flying is really about self-preservation. Like, if getting there alive, then everyone else will too. So we're kind of looking out for us, but looking out for everyone. And I think people need to remember that the cabin crew are there for safety, and they're not just waitresses in the air. Because sometimes I think people forget that. They'll save your life.
A little bit of history. I didn't know you were British, but you're working for an Irish company, so maybe we can focus on that.
Yeah.
Gráinne Cronin. She became Aer Lingus pilot in 1961 and was made captain in 1969. She has retired after 33 years in service in 2010, and in 1988 a commuter aircraft left Dublin Airport and flew to Shannon with the first all-woman crew on board. Gráinne Cronin followed not only Amelia Earhart's steps, but also Lady Mary Heath, who was a flyer in 1920s. Before Captain Gráinne Cronin, we had a Wicklow-born woman named Gillian Cazalet, who was a commercial air pilot with Skyways and Sweden, and Dan Air from the United Kingdom. Looking how far we came in the last 100 years, not only in aviation, but also in other male-dominated fields. What do you think are the next steps so that women are treated equally as men?
I think with regards to flying, generally women are treated equally. I know that percentages don't look that way, and I think realistically it's because women aren't generally interested in this job. You know, I don't have any friends from back home who ever had any interest in planes, and I don't know whether that because they haven't been told about it or whether it's just because they're not interested in it. There's more and more girls flying now, especially in my company. You notice it a lot more, and I think it's just a matter of time until we take only women fly. There'll be no men. We'll kick them out.
Can you imagine like an airline only
it
run
would be
only
great.
by women?
The best days I've ever had flying have been 2 girls in the flight deck, and it's only happened about 3 times in my 4.5 years, but they've been my favourite days because it's just a different dynamic, you know, and it's really enjoyable when there's 2 women.
Did you ever see the movie G.I. Jane with Demi Moore? Oh, it's an amazing movie. She is basically this soldier or army woman who is training in special forces. The guys are really nasty to her, and she is fighting really hard. You know, she's exercising a lot to be the best, you know, better than the guys. And so, did you ever feel pressure from your male classmates when you were doing your education and training?
When I was doing my training, no. The guys I did my training with were a fantastic group of lads, and they're still my best friends now to this day. There were, on my course, 2 girls. There was me and another girl, and probably about 16 or 17 guys. They treated us the same. I think you have to have a certain mindset to become a girl pilot, in that, you know, you have to be able to take a joke. People will make jokes. There's a lot of times I've heard the "you're not parking it though, are you?" joke. So many times I've heard this joke. Even my dad made the joke. And so you've kind of got to have the attitude where you can just laugh it off and be secure within your own knowledge that you know exactly what you're doing. And now I've never got that from any of my contemporaries. Sometimes it comes from mostly older male passengers who generally make that joke. I've never had it from another captain, and I've never had it from any of the guys I did my training with. They were all grand. And also, a lot of people will tell you that girls make better pilots anyway, because we're slightly less macho when it comes to certain things. You know, we're more likely to take a step back, look at the whole thing, the situation, and evaluate it from an unbiased perspective. Whereas sometimes you'll get men who are just like, "I'm great, I can do this, let's go." Whereas women are more likely to be sort of a little bit less overconfident. And also, generally, our handling of the aeroplane is slightly softer.
Did you ever have a passenger that did not want to fly because you're a woman? I'm asking because I had a situation in my job where one of our customers wanted a good delivered only by a man.
Really?
It was in the contract.
Oh my goodness.
Actually, one of my colleagues made mistakes and approved this contract, and it was like a big deal. So this is actually one of the questions I was wondering.
That is shocking. I have never experienced that, but I have heard of it. I did hear that there was an all-female crew flying out of a London airport, and I believe a passenger offloaded themselves because they didn't want to fly on it. I know, it's so ridiculous. I find it funny that people can actually think that way. I don't know what they think. I don't know if they think that we didn't do the same training as the men. I have no idea. But fortunately, I've never had anyone actually not want to fly. I've had people make comments, but I've never had anyone specifically want to get off because I'm in charge.
I don't know if you are aware, there is this international organization for women pilots. It's called the 99s. Are you part of it?
I am not, and I'm actually not aware of it.
Okay.
Which isn't very helpful for the purposes of the interview.
Are you a part of any organization for women pilots?
No, I'm not. We have like a little group within our company of people, but we don't really. It's more just we're pilots sort of a group. We don't do anything. I have heard of some organisations for women in flying, but I'm not actually a part of it.
Well, there's something that you can look out. I found it yesterday. It's, you know, to celebrate also the achievement that Amelia Earhart did.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, they did kind of promote this organization. And you can donate as well on their website.
Oh, really?
They have meetings. I think it's based in the US, so maybe that's why you didn't hear about it.
Yeah, it might be, yeah.
But it's international, so I thought it would be like quite common here as well.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I actually don't know.
If you had a daughter and she would decide to join the force, what advice would you give her?
Do it. Work hard and do it. I would never encourage anyone who didn't have an interest in planes or flying to do it. I wouldn't force anyone into it. But if I had a daughter and she had an interest in it, I would be fully behind it because it's a great job. There's nothing quite like the feeling of rolling down a runway and actually being the person that's controlling the plane for the people, because it's just a fantastic feeling. And the views are great, especially over the
What advice would you give to all the young women that are just starting their adventure in aviation?
Stick with it. Have a thick skin, because people will say things sometimes. and be proud, because it's great to be part of something that's growing, which women in aviation is growing. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a massive feminist, burnt a bra or anything, but I think it's really great to be doing something that people don't expect. And I think it's brilliant that we can show other girls that they can do it, and that we can do basically anything we can better. They were agreeing with me.
Why can you keep the phone on?
So, the thing with the phones, which must be the most common thing I get asked when people find out I'm a pilot, is what happens when you have your phone on during a flight? Do you know when you put a phone next to a radio and you get a call coming in and it does that thing? That'll happen to us with our radios. Now, it doesn't always happen. I'm fairly convinced that sometimes I'm flying and there's people in the back with their phones on, but quite a lot of the time you can actually hear the feedback coming through. So it just disturbs us and can distract us. It's, as far as I know, I don't think the navigations will pack up if you have your phone, but it's a distraction for the pilots sometimes. You'll just get the interference coming through from your phones if you're trying to search. So that's the secret with the phones.
I am always good. I always switch it off. Even my Kindle is always, on the fly mode.
Good.
Just, just in case.
Yeah.
So, I am a good girl.
Good.
That will be it for today. We had all the questions here answered by Rachel. Thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully we can maybe schedule another meeting maybe with another questions.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me.